we were at lunch and we're talking. I said this. I said something to the effect of, man, I got to put a picture of you up so people can see, like, they get the full effect. Because you think of counselors, like, you think of, like, we have a stereotype. Mm-hmm. And, you weren't offended when I said, yeah, I know counseling, like, there's so much solid science behind it. Because I've been reading it as I've been writing a lot of stuff about trauma and healing. But I'm coming at it from a theological angle, not from, like, your side of, the counseling clinical side. And pulling and trying to synthesize all of that. And I said something to the effect of, like, don't take this wrong, but it seems like the best counselors are part science, part art, meaning a lot of it's a little weird. I actually said that. Like, it's like you got to be willing to just try, even though it's backed by solid science.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I tell people all the time when we're getting into EMDR before we get into it, I'm like, I preface it that way. I'm like, this is weird. I'm going to tell you, this is weird.
But it works. So, like, there's verifiable fruit. It's like,
so when I sit in front of someone and I'm, moving my fingers in front of their face back and forth to direct their eyes, like, that's weird.
Hey friend, this is Andy Jenkins, episode number 45 of the yet to be named podcast. Already 45 in, and still haven't thought about, what are we going to call this thing? This is episode number 2 in a series of 3 with my friend Beau Armistead, who runs Sojourn Counseling here in the Birmingham area in Vestavia. That's a suburban community right there. It's its own city inside of the Birmingham Metroplex. I don't even know if you'd call it a Metroplex, but let's just kind of roll with it. It is a nonprofit 501c3 where they do incredible work. In fact, I believe that last year, due to some grants and donations and other money they were able to raise through a license plate project that's all listed at ease.org, link down to that in the show notes, they were able to give away $400,000 worth of services to people, in addition to some of the paid services that they do. So I pulled him I'm in Beth's tiny room down here right now. Pulled him down in this room based on some conversations we had. And I told him, I said, to be a counselor and to use some of the therapies and modalities that you guys use, you really have to be, and here's how I said it, I didn't mean any offense to it at all, and he didn't take it like that. In fact, I said this to a gal that I bumped into that does equine therapy, and I said the exact same thing. I said, you really have to be science-driven, because there is fruit and there is substance to what you do, but there's also so much art, and you have to be a little bit open and willing to take the risk and feel a little bit, and both people said, yeah, a little bit weird, right? And I thought, that's my sentiments exactly. Anyway, as you kind of dive into it, though, you find out that some of what he's going to talk about, EMDR, brain spotting, and even tapping, micro neurofeedback, some of these, they actually replicate the way God designed your body to work. And not only the way he designed your body to work, but actually the way he designed you to heal. And so I just invited him here into the tiny room. Beth let us use it and said, hey, I want to record you talking a little bit about this. And since the goal of the GY6 project, in fact, you could say this of all the resources that we create, not just that one, it's to be scripturally solid, scientifically accurate, and simple to understand and apply. Since that's the case, I really think I can bring in the simple to understand and apply, and I can bring in the scripturally solid element, but I need you to explain the science and explain how these therapies work, and let's just have the conversation. So here it is. If you've not listened to the previous episode, if you haven't been to episode number 44, that was number 1 out of 3 with Beau, I would encourage you, listen through this one, get it, boomerang back, and go catch that one on the tail end of this one. And after that, just know I got another one coming. All right? Here it is.
And so with EMDR therapy and brain spotting is another thing we do, and I can tell you about that. But and I love it when people are skeptical about it and they're like, I don't know, man, this is like voodoo or whatever. And then 30 minutes later, like, oh my gosh, like I feel so much better, and I'm not disturbed by that thing anymore. Like, yeah,
because you said, because it mimics what God has already designed your system to do.
Yeah, that's right. And like I told you earlier, I like to quote my mom on this, because she used to always say that science is always trying to catch up with God. And this is, to me, it's like a very clear example of like Francine Shapiro developed EMDR therapy, and I very much believe that it was it is God's design, and He gave her the
revelation
insight and the revelation of this. But anyway,
describe it. So how long has it been around, and describe how it works?
It's been around like 40 years, and it's very it's many studies. It's scientifically based. It's evidence based, and proven. And for me, even if I didn't see all that, which you can see as much research on it as you want at this point, but even if I didn't see all that, like all the evidence I need is like what's in front of me.
Yeah, you see the guy in the chair in front of you.
When I see someone go from, like, we use a scale of 0 to 10. Disturbance, and 10 being like 911, like it's the worst it can be. 0, no disturbance at all. I got someone come in, sit in front of me, and they've got like this 8, 9, or 10 disturbance level trauma that we're talking about, and 30 minutes later it's a 0.
Yeah.
And they come back 2 weeks later and it's still a 0, and they come back a year later and it's still a 0. Like
that's pretty solid.
The proof's in the pudding. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would have been like happy with like, we went from an 8 or a 9 down to like a 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're saying, it totally takes the crumpled up paper, sorts it, files it.
Yep. Yeah. And it's just because our brain knows exactly what it needs to do to heal. It just, because it's stuck, and because of the nature of how trauma changes our brain, it can't process that on its own. And so with the assistance of EMDR therapy, it can actually go through the process that it needs to go through. It can file that thing away, and it will remain filed away forever. It's like it's not going to come back.
It seems like, so I did a lot of work several years ago in the physical health space, and one of the things that we continually taught people is that your body, when functioning properly, has an immune system and will self-heal. So if I break this bone, it's going to heal back very likely stronger and harder than it was before. Or if I cut myself, it's going to heal back. If I get sick or get an infection, everything, T white blood cells are going to armor up to go fight that. Everything in my body's going to go fight that infection. It seems like what you're getting at is on a mental health, whatever you want to call it, soul level, your body's designed the same way when you give it what it needs.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like it's gonna like God's designed you to move towards health.
Yep.
Again, but like we got kingdom software in us, but living in a hard drive of a world that's not going to be right this side of heaven.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So describe the EMDR.
Yeah. So what it does, so eye movement desensitization reprocessing, it uses bilateral stimulation. And so any left and right, accessing left and right side of your brain alternately. And so I do eye movements. So I'll sit in front of my client and move my fingers back and forth to direct their eyes back and forth. That bilateral stimulation is connecting the left and right sides of the brain. So you're bringing together language and images. Because when we have a traumatic experience, oftentimes there is, we don't have words to describe it. Like the impact is so deep in us, and the impact is so significant that we can't even put words to what it is that we feel and what it is that we've experienced. And particularly when we're dealing with childhood trauma, if I were going to talk to you about some 2-year-old or 3-year-old trauma you experienced, when we talk about that thing, your brain is going back to that age and that time and experiencing that thing the way you did in that moment. You're not going to have a vocabulary to describe what it is that you experienced. You can't articulate as a 2-year-old what this trauma was because you didn't have an understanding. You didn't have a vocabulary. You can't articulate. And so in childhood trauma, particularly, like there are no words to describe what this trauma was. But your brain has the words now, right? And so when we bring the images and the memories together with the words, it comes together to bring clarity. And And it doesn't have to just be childhood trauma. I mean, whether it could be anything: crime, accidents, combat, first responder work, whatever.
Well, sometimes trauma moves so quick. Like if it's abrupt, you don't have words because it happens so fast.
Right. Well, and it's a shock on your brain in such a way that when that shock happens on your brain, it takes away, like you no longer have the prefrontal cortex processing ability in that moment because you're not there right now. And so in that moment, you don't have the words to even describe what's happening because you have now shifted into a different part of your brain. So, so there's the bilateral stimulation is bringing the images and the words together. It's also what we call dual attention. And so if we're talking about something that's terribly disturbing, but also I'm waving my hand in front of your face and doing the eye movements, that dual attention is taking enough attention away from the actual disturbing thing that we're talking about. It's distracting enough that allows you to enter into processing that thing without being overwhelmed.
Because you got your hands out in front of me?
Because it's distracting.
Yeah.
So that's the dual attention part of it.
Okay.
And whether it's eye movements or, sometimes we'll do self-tapping on our knees or like a butterfly hug, tapping our shoulders. Sometimes I've got little buzzers or tappers that are like basically little vibrators you're holding your hand, and
it all sounds really weird.
Goes back and forth.
But, okay, but it's bilateral
stimulation,
dual
attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so the bilateral stimulation is part of dual attention, right? So
the bilateral stimulation does. If you've seen people in REM, like their eyes are.
That's right.
Shuffling.
Yep.
Quick.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I mean, rapid eye movement. Like
That's
it's going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Yep. So this is mimicking that.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's what's your brain when your eyes are jumping around in your head during rapid eye movements. That's your brain processing.
It's sorting stuff.
And filing stuff away. The stuff that can't be filed away. But it can't get to the piece of paper on top of the file cabinet. That's where EMDR comes in.
Okay.
And so, it's the dual attention. It's the joining the words and the language. It's also bilateral stimulation is very regulating for your central nervous system. And so even if we're not doing processing, a lot of times I will do slow eye movements or slow tapping with people. Part of the grounding techniques that I teach people, one of them is slow self-tapping, bilateral stimulation, because that slow tapping is very calming for your nervous system. And so, sometimes, and you're an active guy, so you can relate. But a lot of times people say, "Hey, if I go for a walk, I feel so much better afterwards." Or if I go for a run or a
100%.
bike ride or whatever, that's all.
Because exercise
bilateral.
fires the parasympathetic nervous system. Is the opposite of fight and flight.
Yep, and part of that is the bilateral. So when you're walking, it's like left, right. You're riding your bike.
Because I got to need to describe that because people can't see it because we're on audio. So when you were tapping, you were just slowly. I don't know if you can hear that. I can look at the sound thing here. You were tapping your right knee, then tapping your left knee, tapping. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or crossing your hands across your chest and
like
tapping
when you hug yourself.
That's right. Giving yourself a hug and tapping your shoulders alternately.
Left shoulder, right shoulder.
Mm-hmm. That slow tapping is very regulating for you.
Okay, so when I go run in the afternoon, like sometimes if my brain's stuck, like I'm sitting there writing, I'm like, okay, I got. It's not necessarily writer's block. It might just be. Usually it's not writer's block. It's usually I just don't want to do this right now. Like I need to take a mental break. Yeah. And so, I'll go run or something and then I'll have 17 more ideas that kind of clarify while I'm out and then come back, take a shower. And then I'm generally more productive, even having lost an hour, hour and a half to the run and the shower and the cool down and all that.
Well, it's an indication you haven't really lost that hour and a half. It's been very productive.
It's been a very productive step out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you're saying that's because in part,
a lot of that is the bilateral. It's getting your.
I mean, I knew the other parts, but that just helped me get another layer of it.
Yeah. Well, and I don't see couples. I used to, but I would, when I was seeing couples, I'd say, hey, y'all go for a walk together. Go for a walk and talk because when you're walking, things can come more easily. You can sometimes formulate thoughts better. Like it's just it's helping your brain. It's part of the bilateral.
You weren't designed to sit on the couch in front of an iPhone.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah. For sure. So that's it. Bilateral stimulation. That's the dual attention. It helps your brain get into the process. And so Again, the cool thing is when we're doing EMDR, there's no pressure on me as the clinician to make it work. There's no pressure on the client to make anything work. Like, we've come up with this memory. We've come up with a belief about the memory. We've kind of identified the level of disturbance around that memory. And then the brain's going to do the rest. I mean, we'll get all that stuff set up, and I start with the bilateral stimulation, and I'll do a set of eye movements. And at the end of that, I'll say, hey, tell me what you notice. And whatever you notice is the right thing. It doesn't matter. So we don't ask questions about anything that you notice. It can be a word. It can be an image. It can be a part of the memory. It can be a color. It can be a sound. It can be a physical sensation. It can be emotion. It can feel completely unrelated to what we're even talking about. I mean, we could be processing, say you were mugged 5 years ago and you're still dealing with the trauma of that. We could be talking about that, and during bilateral stimulation, during the eye movements, I always make the joke, Barney the purple dinosaur might show up as an image in your mind. And okay, that's cool. That's perfect. That's exactly what needed to come up. I don't know why. And I don't have to ask questions why, because I'm not doing the work your brain is.
Yeah.
I tell people EMDR is like getting on a train that's your brain, and that it knows exactly where to go. It's already got its route planned out. All we're going to do is we're going to notice along the way what it's doing. And so we're looking out the window of the train, and we're driving by, and we're like, oh, there's a barn, and there's a house, and there's a truck, and there's a cow, and there's a dog, and there's a tree.
Barney the dinosaur.
Barney the dinosaur, like whatever we're seeing out the train window.
Yeah.
It's literally like that. We just notice it, and it keeps going. And it doesn't matter what it is. Your brain's doing exactly what it needs to do. And so
to use that other analogy, it might be sorting stuff that's crumpled or whatever that we didn't even know about.
Right.
Or
yeah, that's taking that piece of paper and smoothing it out, and it's just,
Yeah.
it's clearing things up, and by the end of that process, that piece of paper goes in the file, and it's all done, and it really works just that well. I mean, it's fast, it's very efficient. You know what I love about EMDR is it's I love so many things about EMDR, but one of the things is just very efficient, and so in that, I've talked to so many people who have been in types of therapy for years and years and years and years and years, and they're still talking about the same trauma. And literally, we can do one session around that trauma, and it's done.
Well, you had said something like, I think I actually quoted it I put it on a slide, I think, for one of the workshops. You had said something like, you can't talk your way out of trauma.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because the physical impact of trauma on your brain, one thing that happens is that your amygdala, which is the alarm system in our brain.
It's the big boss bodyguard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's what's telling us there's danger. The amygdala is enlarged. And so its role has increased. It's working in overdrive. It's actually physically it's enlarged in your brain. It's doing more work. It's more hypervigilant. It's having you in alarm mode more often than you need to be. It's telling you that blue is dangerous when blue is not dangerous. And also the hippocampus shrinks. Hippocampus is part of the brain that helps you determine time and space around something. So this trauma happened 25 years ago. But because of the sort of degraded function of my hippocampus now, that trauma that I experienced 25 years ago can still feel like it's today. Like there's that reality of time and space is altered.
Well, it kind of makes sense anyway, because we're designed for eternity.
Right.
We're not designed for time and space.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah.
I don't know how that fits in there, but
physical. No, but that's true. And, I think that what people don't understand a lot of times when we're talking about trauma is, that there is physical change in the brain. There's physical impact in the brain. Like our executive function is compromised. And so we don't have the ability to make decisions the way we used to make plans the way we used to be organized and orderly the way we used to be. People who deal with a lot of trauma, sometimes they're going to look very untidy. Sometimes they're going to be clumsy because part of their brain that helps with coordination and balance and those sort of things is altered spatial relations. Like that stuff is messed up.
It's really it's literally rewired.
It's rewired.
It's created new neural pathways.
Right. And so the beauty of EMDR and trauma processing therapies is those things actually heal. You can see pre and post brain scans of pre-EMDR traumatized brain, post-EMDR traumatized brain, and there's a difference in that brain in terms of how it's lit up and what's going on in the brain.
Yeah, I told you I'd talked to a group of veterans out of Chicago that had reached out to me that had showed, hey, there is a brain map of what a PTSD looks like, and they're trying to identify, is there one for moral injury? Where you can literally look at the brain scan and go, oh, there's
that's really cool.
Yeah. Okay, so you were saying back to it changes, and so there's all these trauma therapies that you guys use, some of which sound weird. Tell me about the next one that you would like to discuss, and would that be like micro?
So yeah, I'll hit on brain spotting first, and then because brain spotting is really
take them in the order that makes the most sense to you.
Brain spotting and EMDR are trauma processing therapies. So what those do is they actually take the traumatic memory and they assist your brain in processing through it so it can be filed away and done.
Brain spotting.
EMDR and brain spotting.
Okay.
So EMDR is the OG, like that was the original.
The OG.
Yeah. Then brain spotting came out of EMDR. So Dr. David Grand, he discovered brain spotting as an EMDR therapist. And basically what he discovered is that in our brain, memories are located in very specific geographic spots. And so like literally there's a spot in your brain that's holding different memories and things. And so by directing your eye gaze, your eyes connect to that spot in your brain.
Okay, so I guess he got that out of the EMDR because what would happen? They're doing the EMDR, so they're moving the hands.
Which is interesting. Before I knew about EMDR, I had some similar experiences in EMDR that he describes in his book that helped him develop brain spotting. And that is when I'm directing someone's eyes with my fingers, sometimes there was like this like little skip point where like instead of this fluid movement back, forth, left, and right, there would be like this little hiccup where it kind of jumps or stops or something. And I used to notice that and be like, well, what is that about? That's interesting. But David Grand took it a step further. He's like, what is that about? I'm going to explore that further.
Why are they jumping it? Yeah. Okay.
And so when he found that little jumpy spot in their eyes, he would
they're tracking and then it
kind of skips.
Okay.
Yeah. It's noticeable, a glitch in the eyes. And so, but when he noticed that, he just stopped his fingers, stopped the movement and held it right in that spot where the glitch was, or the skip or wherever stopped. And in that, he just paused his fingers, let them continue, keep their gaze there, and then the processing just flowed, almost like a movie playing. And
like just in their head, they're not talking. It's just
and people can either talk it out and tell you what they're noticing, or they just notice it internally. He noticed that, and he took it further and explored it and discovered that actually we're holding memories in our brains in certain spots. And so where EMDR is, I tell people that there's the difference. The way I picture it in my brain is that EMDR is like snorkeling and brain spotting is like scuba diving. And that is with EMDR, I'm going to do eye movements. I'm going to say, take a deep breath. Tell me what you notice. You're going to be like, I saw Barney the Purple Dinosaur. I'm like, all right, cool. Go with that. And then I'm going to start eye movements again and do that for a bit and then stop and take a deep breath. Tell me what you notice. And like, I saw, the color orange. I'm like, okay, cool, go with that. And so we're kind of going this back and forth, like bilateral stimulation. What did you notice? Bilateral stimulation. What did you notice? And so that's.
But you're doing the what did you notice where there's use the word glitch.
Well, no. With EMDR, I'm doing like a certain number of eye movements.
Okay.
And then stopping and having you take a deep breath and telling me, what do you notice?
Okay.
So it's like I'm
doing
sort
the
of
EMDR. Yeah.
And the reason I consider that snorkeling is because when I'm doing eye movements, you're going down deep subcortical part of your brain where memories are processing and your brain's moving. And then I say, what do you notice? And you pop up into your prefrontal cortex because you got to be able to form a thought and the words to tell me what you notice.
Yeah, you got to logically, articulate it.
And then I say, go with that. And I start eye movements again and you go back down deep again.
Okay.
And then we stop and you come back up. So I sort of picture that as like snorkeling, like you're going down and you're coming up and you're going down and you're coming up. Brain spotting, we find that spot and we stay on the spot. And you might hold your eyes in one spot looking at I use a pointer for people to look at. And you might look at that pointer for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 25 minutes or 40 minutes. It doesn't matter, like whatever the thing ends up being. And all during that time, it's like the processing is just flowing. And so people will sometimes talk out and tell me what they're noticing. Sometimes they just keep it internally. but people describe it as like a movie playing, or like all this process is happening, and we're just staying down deep in the depths of the processing instead of up and down and up and down. And so that's kind of how I view it as scuba diving. Like, you're going down
I feel
deep
like I'm going to have to go sit in and do it so I can describe it.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Like, I'm going to have to just, jump in and.
Yeah.
That, okay. So brain spotting is when there's a glitch. Mm-hmm. You've noticed it through the EMDR where they're skipping a spot.
That's how it was discovered.
That's how it's discovered.
Glitch. But now we don't start with EMDR and move into brain spotting.
Okay.
We'll just, I'll use EMDR or brain spotting interchangeably depending on the client, depending on the thing we're talking about, depending on whatever. I'll determine what's going to be the best modality. EMDR is the bilateral, the eye movements.
Okay.
If we choose to go that route, we're going to go that route. If we choose to go brain spotting route, we're going to go that route. And I guess I have,
well, you got the credentials,
mixed them up in a session to do
and the
EMDR
experience, and the reps of having, served, hundreds of people. Mm-hmm. Like that's just a different level than like what we're describing. I mean, you can't really encapsulate that little quick conversation.
Yeah. And there is something to that, like being able to determine like what's the best modality in this moment. But I love both. They're both great modalities. And I use them interchangeably. Like I said, I mean, I'm full on EMDR. Like that's my thing.
That's kind of your jam. Like if you had to like weapon of choice, like that's probably wrong terminology to use, but that's the tool modality. There you go. Modality. That's the modality of choice.
Yeah, for sure.
Like if you're starting somewhere, like if we walk in and you don't know anything, like that's where you're starting.
Well, and the beautiful thing about EMDR, and I do EMDR consulting with people, with other professionals, and like I like to remind them and encourage them, like you can literally do EMDR with anything. Like I don't care who walks in the door. I literally don't care who walks in the door. We could do EMDR, and because if you're dealing with a big T trauma, we can use it. If we're dealing with a little T trauma, we can use it. If we're dealing with some negative cognition or false belief or lie, however you want to call that, that's how I start all of my new sessions. Is I'll hand someone a sheet of what EMDR calls negative cognitions. We can call them false beliefs or lies or whatever. But like I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, I deserve bad things. I'm like stupid, I'm ugly, like whatever. Like there's so many of these things. I'll hand everybody that list, and I'll be like, let's identify the things on this list that you feel and believe about yourself. We can take one of those beliefs and start EMDR.
Man, there are people, like a lot of people walking around with that.
Oh, everyone's walking
that you
around
wouldn't know. I mean, like
we're all walking around with it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, like I was talking to somebody yesterday that is a high achieving, high level person sitting in that chair right there where you are, and I mean, I asked one question, and all of a sudden, it wasn't for a podcast; it was for a project we're working on, and all of a sudden, person says, tears up, and then all of a sudden, and I'm like, wait, tell me a little bit about that, and it's boom, there's the story, there's all the stuff, and it's everybody's
dealing with it to some degree or another, and everyone is going to sit in that chair and look at that list and tell me a handful of those things that they believe or feel about themselves. Everyone, I don't care who you are. But what we can do is, so when someone comes in, if we've got a big T trauma to deal with, all right, cool, here's this car accident we need to process. We'll get straight to it.
Yeah.
If it's more like, hey, I'm having issues in my marriage. Oh, tell me about that. Well, I get real aggravated when my wife does this thing or that thing. Oh, tell me about that. Like, and we're going to narrow it down. Like, oh, what you're feeling is that I'm not good enough, and that you feel like she's telling you that every time she tells you to take the trash out or whatever. Like, that's not what's happening, but that's what you're feeling.
That's what you're feeling
because that's what's been built into you from a very early age. We process those things by going back to the beginning of where those things began, and where that lie originated, and processing that stuff with EMDR. So literally, EMDR is good for anything and everything and everyone.
And then the brain spotting is...
And brain spotting is basically the same thing. It's just
deep.
It's a different way of getting to the processing, but your brain's doing the same.
We're not snorkeling, we're scuba diving on the same thing. Yeah. Okay. All right. So tell me about microcurrent neurofeedback. Is that right?
Yeah, very good.
Okay.
Yeah, so MCN for short, because microcurrent neurofeedback is a mouthful.
MCN.
We call it MCN. So MCN is a very gentle and mild brain stimulation that helps to restore balance to our brain. That's it in a nutshell. Basically,
Why would you need that?
well, we all need it because just life in general, our brain waves are not performing the way they did originally. And I say originally, some of us might come into the world with brain waves that aren't performing optimally. Life in general, our brain waves are going to change. But if we've ever had any knock to the head, and I don't mean like diagnosed concussion, like football or fights or accidents or whatever, but any kind of bump to the head, like if you're 3 years old on your tricycle in the front yard and roll off and hit your head in the grass and, go cry and your mom takes care of you, whatever. Like that kind of bump to the head is going to change your brain waves.
So this doesn't have to be like a traumatic blow. This could just be a...
Just a bump. Just
Yeah,
a
you
bonk
said
to the head.
you said a bump or a bonk.
Yeah, just a bonk will change your brain waves. But any traumatic experience we have will change our brain waves. Just the stress of life, substances will change our brain waves. So there's so many things that will change how our brain performs. And the things that we see oftentimes quickly corrected and sustainably corrected through neurofeedback are things like anxiety, depression, insomnia, ADD, ADHD, memory, concentration issues, some behavioral things with people with autism, tremors with Parkinson's, migraine, anger, so many things, symptoms of PTSD, symptoms of concussion or a mild traumatic brain injury, because our brain waves are out of whack. And when they are, we deal with those symptoms. In our culture, obviously the kind of the go-to is medication. So if I'm anxious, I'm going to take the anti-anxiety medication. If I'm depressed, I'm going to take the antidepressant. If I'm not sleeping, I'm going to take sleeping medication. If I'm dealing with ADD, I'm going to take the Adderall or whatever.
And if substances affect your brain waves, then you've just injected another variable.
Yes,
It could be helpful, true. And it could be...
Well, and so the thing is, and that's a good point. So the thing is that our kind of go-to is medication, but I think oftentimes, and I've learned this more over the past, we've been doing this for 8 years now, and I've learned it more over the past 8 years that I think more often our imbalance is electrical instead of chemical.
Okay.
And so...
You're injecting a chemical...
to try to correct
an electrical issue.
Yeah, and it doesn't work. And so we can get symptom relief. And so, yes, you might get some relief from your anxiety with an anti-anxiety medication, but that's symptom relief. You're not correcting the problem.
Yeah, that's like going to your house and trying to fix the plumbing when really you got a light switch issue.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yep.
That's exactly a good right. Man.
And so
you can use that. You got all these analogies.
Yeah. Yeah,
you can have that.
Oh, thanks.
You go.
Yeah. Well, I use I do say, like, if you have an electrical issue in your house, you're not going to call a chemist, but
the plumber.
Yeah,
There's no
plumber.
chemist
Yeah,
in any.
right.
If you're calling a chemist in your house, you've got to
get some serious issues.
Yeah, that's a whole nother issue altogether. Like you go Breaking Bad, that kind of. So yeah, plumber.
So that's right. Yeah, I'll make a note of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what we're doing is we're trying to correct an electrical issue with chemistry, and it doesn't work. And so we can get some symptom relief, but we're not getting actual change. And I kind of explain to people, like, there's this medication dance that so many people experience, and it's like, I'm going to get on this medicine, and it's going to have to be tweaked 3 months down the road, increased or decreased or changed, and I have to add this other medication to it, and then I'm going to have side effects from that, so I need this other medication. So there's like all this juggling of trying to get the medication right. With microcurrent neurofeedback, it's correcting the balance, it's restoring balance to your brain and the out of balance brain waves. And what we see is most often within 3 to 4 sessions, oftentimes earlier than that, but we tell people 3 to 4 sessions, you're going to probably start noticing positive change. And that can look different for everyone. And when people start MCN, I always say just be generally observant of the things that you notice, because so many things can be changing that if you're just like hyper focused on this one thing, like I want my anxiety to change, cool, you'll probably see that happening. But what you might not also notice is that you're sleeping better and you feel more clarity and capacity in the work that you're doing. You like all these things can be changing around you. You might have intrusive thoughts that are no longer getting stuck, or like all these different things can be changing, and it's because we're restoring overall balance to your brain. We're not just targeting a symptom. And so
Kind
again,
of dealing with the root issue instead of just like
right.
plucking leaves.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. So if you happen to be anxious, depressed, not sleeping, and have ADD, you're taking a handful of medications because you're addressing one symptom at a time.
That all
with
have
each
side
medication.
effects that cause other physical issues
That's right.
that you then play whack-a-mole with.
That's right. Exactly. With MCN, we've seen many, many people come off their medications because they're like, oh, look here, like I feel better now. I'm not as anxious or depressed, and I'm sleeping, and I'm like, all these things are changing. And then and I don't advise people on their medication because I'm not a doctor, but I do advise them to talk with their doctor about
talk to their doctor.
change. Yeah. And people will come off their medications and still have sustainable change after a course of MCN.
So do you use MCN as often as you use, I mean, it seemed like EMDR was kind of your go-to. Like that was the...
Right. And so I've been an EMDR therapist for longer than I have been an MCN provider. And the reason that we brought MCN into Sojourn counseling is because after years of EMDR, I realized that it is very effective in treating and resolving traumatic memories, processing those things and filing them away. What it's not doing is changing our brain waves that have been affected and impacted by the trauma that we've experienced. And so I thought, what if we process the trauma with EMDR or brain spotting and restore balance to the brain with MCN? It's like a double whammy approach to healing because we're doing all the things. And that was my hope, and that's actually what we've seen.
Kind of getting you a clean slate.
Yeah, it's really, it is giving you a clean slate. It's you're sort of processing through, filing away all the traumatic memories, or whatever the things that have been problematic, and then restoring balance to your brain. And so there's really, we talked earlier about how people say that I hate who I am because of this, or whatever. A lot of that, when it's actually how they are, not who they are. A lot of the how stuff changes with the combination of EMDR and MCN. And honestly, a lot of the how can change just with MCN, even though the trauma is not processed yet and still needs to be processed symptomatically. Like we can address the things, anxiety, depression, anger, insomnia, concentration, those kind of things with MCN, which I think sometimes is actually a great entryway into counseling. We talked to a lot of people who are like, counseling's not for me. I don't want to come in there and talk about all my stuff and like whatever. MCN is going to help them get some change, even if they're not talking about anything. Help them find some relief. And then a lot of times what happens is like, oh, I'm feeling this relief. I feel like I've got a little bit of capacity now, a little bit of ability to kind of talk about some things, and then segue right into therapy. So it's great. Also, kind of an advantage of doing MCN either as a standalone or alongside therapy is it changes neuroplasticity in our brain. So it allows us to create new neural pathways more easily. And so if there's something you're working to change, whether it's a stuck pattern of behavior or thinking or even addiction or whatever, if you're trying to make a change in a certain way, the changed neuroplasticity that results from MCN allows you to create those pathways more easily. So we've seen people have significant change in their efforts to change in addictive behavior, whether it's nicotine, alcohol, chronic pot smoking, porn. Like we've seen people who have had addictive behaviors that they want to change and they've tried to change 1,000 times and they've not been able to because they didn't have this advantage with the neuroplasticity change. Once they have the MCN, we've seen people quit all those things.
So would you say the brainwaves are part of your nervous system? Is that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's all part of like kind of the operating system there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we provide, so in terms of addiction recovery, we provide neurofeedback services at the Foundry Ministry, which is a recovery program here in Birmingham. We're there 4 days a week. And provide MCN for their participants and have consistent positive feedback on reduction in anxiety, improved sleep, reduced urge. And so people aren't having the urges for their substance. Particularly the thing that people notice changing quickly is their urge for nicotine. Because a lot of people in recovery are still using nicotine.
Yeah, get off the hard drugs, but yeah.
And so they'll notice, first of all, that's the most noticeable thing is, hey, I'm not craving nicotine the way I was before, and then they start to realize, oh, these urges are changing when it comes to whatever my substance of choice has been that got me here.
Oh, wow. Okay, let's. Are there other modalities you guys use at Sojourn?
Yeah, those are our primary. I mean, EMDR, brain spotting, and MCN are our primary. But
Okay.
yes, I mean, we know there's some CBT in there. There's some lifespan integration. There's different modalities that different people use at different times. I mean, it's all, the way I look, yeah. There's a blending of modalities. And so, I'm like, I don't do with my clients, I'm not going to do every session that we're together EMDR every time, all the time. Sometimes we're going to be doing some, quote unquote talk therapy.
Yeah, right.
Which is great. And I know that talk therapy is not what they need to bring healing for their trauma. So sometimes we're just going to talk about the stuff that's going on in their marriage or going on at work that week, or like the hard stuff that they're dealing with. And we're just going to have sort of a normal talk therapy session. And we're also going to address whatever traumas are there, whatever negative beliefs are there, using EMDR therapy or brain spotting. So there's a kind of a blending of modalities depending on who's sitting in the chair. Every person is different. Every brain is different. Every person's experiences are different. And everyone's showing up to the counseling office in a different way from day to day.
Man, it makes sense. My friend Mike, we do some tag team teaching on the GY6 project together and some other things. He is the strength and conditioning guy at 7th Group for the Green Berets. Mm-hmm. And the way he describes it is, so he's over the guys that are doing the training and development. They write out a different program for every single guy. So there may be, a handful of guys on one unit that are going in to do a specific task. Yeah. And based on the role they all have, even though they're on the same team, a different workout program physically. Yeah. And then they also address, soul and spirit. And then when they come back, they all have a different healing protocol based on whatever injury or recovery is needed from what they experienced while they were out. I mean, like to hear you say that, I'm like, okay, yeah, that tracks with what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't have a cookie cutter. You can't have a cookie cutter approach to treating everyone, because there's no two people that are the same, and experiences are the same, the brain's the same, and even when it comes to post traumatic stress, and like I may talk to a veteran, and then they're like, man, I was side by side with my battle buddy. We both experienced the same exact thing, and I have come away with significant post-traumatic stress and trauma impact from that thing, and they seem to be doing okay and handling things well. And like what's wrong with me? Like, am I like there's nothing wrong with you? Like, that's another thing that I say all the time. It's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. And the difference there could be exactly that. Like, it's what happened to you is different. So you might have shown up to this particular combat situation with a lifetime of trauma. And so your central nervous system is already compromised. You're already dealing with so much that combat experience was kind of the tipping point,
right?
That tipped you over into post-traumatic stress, where your battle buddy that was sitting next to you might not have had the childhood trauma, might have been in a home that was always loving and supportive and nurturing and caring, and he may have a lot of support back home, and you don't. Like, there's so many variables that go into every person's story that no one's going to be the same, and I think that's a very good example of just that. Like, when you can be literally side by side with someone, experience the same exact trauma in that moment, and one person's going to come away impacted differently than the other person, and a lot of that has to do with different experiences in life leading up to that point.
What they carried up to that point. Yeah, that makes sense. I love the statement that he said in there, that science is so often just catching up to what the scripture has said all along. And so as a person of faith, you don't need to be timid or flounder or shudder back when you see something new that's out there. In other episodes of this podcast, I've actually taught one of the concepts that the Apostle Paul teaches in 1 Corinthians. There is this great episode in the story of that church where some people were following Paul and others were following Peter, others were following Apollos. And he says, no. When you're following a specific leader, a spiritual leader of a congregation, and you're saying, hey, I align with this one, and I align with that one, and no, I align with this one. He says, no, you're acting like mere men. He says, all of these had a part to play in the kingdom of God. One of these, waters. One of these planted what that man is watering. Others cultivated and nurtured, but it was God that was causing the growth. So everybody had their part to play. And then he goes on and says, hey, all of these things are yours. So whether Paul, the one who planted, caused it, created it, or put it there, or whether Apollos who watered and cultivated, or whether it was Cephas, Peter who had a part to play and developed the thoughts even more, whatever. He says all of these, anything from any Christian leader, any person of faith who's faithful, any of that belongs to you. You don't have to choose. You can benefit and pull it all together. And then in that same passage, Paul goes on further. This is 1 Corinthians 3, by the way. He goes on and he says, all things are yours. All things are yours because all things belong to Christ and you have access to him. In fact, he lives in you. In another passage, Paul says, in him we live and move and breathe and have our being. In a different passage in Colossians, he says, Christ is in you. And that's your hope of glory. So that's why he's saying all things are yours from any Christian leader. And then he continues. He says, hey, all things in the whole universe are yours. If there's anything we find out about zoology, about life, it's yours. If there's anything we find out about astronomy or astrology, it's yours. If there's anything we find out about life or death or the process of anything between, it's all yours. And so when you find these elements of science and find out how EMDR works, and you find out how brain spotting works, or you find out how micro neurofeedback works, it almost harkens back to the days of Solomon, where everybody drove their camels and their wagons from all over the known world to come here and see the wisdom of Solomon in action. And when you get there, you learn that Solomon did not just know scripture. He had songs and poems, and he knew about plants and bears and animals and about the stars and so many other things. Why? Because any bit of wisdom we find anywhere, it belongs to Christ, and Christ belongs to you. So, as we sign off, may the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord be gracious and shine his face of favor upon you. And may you lean in and claim anything where there's holy and sacred gain, because all things, all of them, they're all yours. Grace and peace.